For these large wall sconces, you're going to need 3 21-inch ruler sticks times 2, aka large paint sticks, and some tumbling tower blocks. Now I'm going to paint mine up black, and you can leave yours plain, paint yours whatever color you want. And I do want to tell you that this was really tedious, so I quit, and I'll show you what I did to make my life easier in just a second. I put the paint sticks upside down so the neutral part was faced down to the desk, and then glued 4 popsicle sticks. So this way we had some wood glue and hot glue with something holding all 3 of the pieces together for each one of the lanterns. And then when I flipped them over, I put stripes of our Type Bond wood glue at the top and the bottom. And then I did hot glue in sections, adding on our tumbling tower blocks. If you don't want to use tumbling tower blocks, you could just use another paint stick. No matter what size, it would still get the job done. Or you could just use a solid piece of wood. A piece of trim would work as well, to still give you the same idea for these large wall sconces. Once all the tumbling blocks were in place and they were partially dry, I took my little water bottle and did a couple squirts on each one of the tumbling block sections. Grab my black chalk paint, and look how quick this is, people. Literally, it took me like 2 minutes to paint all the other 3 stripes of tumbling tower blocks. For our hooks, I'm going to use these little command strip joints from Dollar Tree. They're super easy to apply on, and they actually hang things and hold on pretty well. They have them in different colors, but I happen to have the clear ones, and I usually just take some chalk paint and paint over them so they match whatever I'm using them for. Obviously, use whatever hooks you would like. Take this idea and remix it according to what works best for your decor. I absolutely love how modern these pieces look. People, this might be the easiest paint stick DIY I've ever made, and I really think it's extremely high-end looking. You'll have to let me know what you think about it. Grab yourself 4 of the 21-inch paint sticks and flip them on the back side. Obviously, paint it whatever color you want. I'm going with white here. And bring in the miter shears. We're going to need to cut at least 1 of the small paint sticks, so this way we can pop it on the back as a brace to keep our large paint sticks together. And if you want to use a miter box or a miter saw, you go right ahead. I am confident that the miter shears can chomp down and handle the job with these little paint sticks. Then I'm just taking some wood glue and smooshing it on the back of these before I take the stapler and plop a bunch of staples in these suckers. And in case you didn't know, I just want to let you know that the staples won't really go through the larger paint sticks, but they go through the small ones just fine, at least for the size staples. You could always get larger staples, but these are the ones I have on hand. I'm taking a little bit of twine and just wrapping it around the top here. You can take some ribbon or whatever, some beads, and put around the top. I'm just using some twine, wrapping it around like 5 or 6 times, and make sure that if you're going to do something like this, use some tacky glue, something that's going to give you a long lasting hold, especially if you plan on selling a piece like this. It's been my experience that if you're just using like a fabric with some wood and you're only putting the hot glue on there, that it will wear down or come off in time, especially if it gets hot. When you're happy with how many ever times you wrap that around there, grab you a hook, okay? And keep in mind that you're going to want to glue this down with some E6000 Gorilla Glue gel, because unless you have really tiny screws on hand, you will see them pop out the back of your project. So just use the glue. It does a really good job. I'm just going to take some of these Dollar Tree wall cling, wall creation pieces and this little stay positive saying and put on the bottom here. If you want it to stay permanently, seal over it with some Mod Podge. However, if you want to be able to change it up, because these do peel off easily, don't seal it up. You can change the saying to your will of your decor. Last, I'm taking one of these Dollar Tree bamboo rings and creating a little wreath to hang off of our hanger. You could of course put whatever type of little wreath you want or hanging decor piece. Switch this out however you want. I love how high-end looking this piece came out, and again, it just cost me a few. This shelf we are creating is going to need 5 5-gallon paint sticks. We're going to arrange the paint sticks so one's, every other is above the other. I don't know how else to explain that. Then we're going to mark them to size. You can have them as long as you want. I'm doing 12 inches because I need to nip the tip off these joints. I know a lot of people leave it on there. I'm gonna cut mine off. I don't like it. And I don't emphasize this enough, but wear proper PPE when you're cutting things down, people. So I clamped these painter sticks in here in a tower like this to nip those yucky tips off. If you're new to cutting things, do one at a time. I don't recommend getting wild like me, but I'm a professional. I'm just kidding. I'm not a professional. I just am lazy and I figured let's just do it all at once. I clamped them joints in there and cut it. Next, we're going to take our 1x6 and make our shelves. And we're only cutting about 3 inches, not much, just about 3 inches. And then we're going to take our strip that we cut and cut it again so we have 2 shelves. And really it's 3 because I cut an extra one. And they're all different sizes. You can create your shelves however big or short or long or tall that you want. You don't have to use these measurements, but I wanted mine to just all be different. And then I took some wood glue and put in between the painter sticks. And then I'm just kind of moving them to the place I want them in and stapling the backs. Also be mindful as you're stapling because, you can miss or the pieces don't go in completely and you don't want to hammer these joints too much because they're thin. So I accidentally, didn't get the staple in there right and I had to pull it out with some needle nose pliers. I did that off camera. I'm saving you guys. But also when you're doing this, you want to keep in mind, since you're not putting like a flat piece across the back, that these are going to be a little wiggly. See, I'm a little wiggly. And it's not a huge deal because I'm putting the shelves on the front with more wood glue and then I'm going to set a bunch of whatever on top of the shelves for 24 hours to make sure that they don't move. So once this all dried, it was just stuck in one place. You could use a shim, a piece of trim, or another painter stick to just go across the whole back if you want it, but I just used my staples. Next, I'm taking some of Dixie Belle's chocolate and watering it down so we have more of a stain than we do a paint. I want to create a blended stained wood look on this instead of more of a blended painted look. And doing this while you're watering them down is super easy. You also can continue painting while they're still wet. It doesn't have to be completely dry. This is just another way to create a blended look, and it doesn't take a lot of practice like it does if I'm using my chalk paints. That kind of takes a little bit of effort, but also you get to see the wood grain coming through as well with this when you water down your paints. This khaki goes so well with this, and it also blends really well having an acrylic go over top of a chalk paint with some water. I don't even think it took me 10 minutes to paint the entire project. This was super easy. But you do want to keep in mind that if you use wood glue, it will show through your paint. So be mindful that when you're using heavier on the paint, that you're covering up the wood glue in those sections so you don't see the stain of the wood glue. These two colors blended together so nicely, but do look over it and see if you have any little holes or spots, and continue to try to blend it before everything completely dries so you don't have different variations in your paint. Once it's all dry, it's time to bring out the crusty bit paintbrush. I use a crusty bit paintbrush to do dry brushing, and it's super easy. Just kind of drag it on down there and the harsh points will put some of the paint on your project. I'm just taking Waverly's white for this, and I'm not going heavy in with it. Very light, just adding a little bit of something extra onto it, and that's it for this one. this large interchangeable home sign, we're going to need several of these 12-inch popsicle sticks. And we're going to need to nip the tip right off the top of these suckers so they look like this. Next, you're going to want to take a minute and arrange the popsicle sticks out to spell H, M, and E. And then you're going to want to take one or two of the popsicle sticks and cut the interjunction pieces. I guess that's what you would call them, interjunction. Interjoining pieces that go in between the letters to actually spell them out. And in case you're wondering what the measurements are, I measured with love. I eyeballed it and rolled on. I grabbed some paint colors, 3 different colors to be exact, and did each letter a different color. I'm going to use some quick and thick Type-On for a long hold and some hot glue for a quick hold. But first up, I wanted to take a minute and just kind of mess around with the pieces, making sure they were in the exact spots I wanted them before I started gluing everything down. Because, you know, once you got them suckers on there, you are not going to be able to pull them back off and recenter anything unless you completely screw the whole piece up. And people, you can absolutely pop some staples in here. Use whatever you would like to join all your little bits and pieces together. I also encourage you to mess around with the pieces and create whatever shape of your M or your E or your H that you would like to see in your home with your decor. As I was creating this, even though you'll see that in my version, I did not add any, I wanted to give you the inspiration for at home. Where each one of the little connecting points are, these would look super cute if you had some buttons, maybe some half beads, and put on there. You could paint them whatever color you think makes sense for the entire piece to kind of match together. Wrap some fairy lights around each individual letter. There is a lot of ways you could get really creative because this is such a large piece. And when you see the thing that we're going to be using for the O, you'll understand exactly why. Look at this basket from Dollar Tree. I love these baskets. I'm really into these baskets right now from Dollar Tree. I know, a basket, Brandy, really? Hear me out. Listen. If you choose to, feel free to use as much floral wire and floral foam and glue everything down as you want to. You're going to see here in my example that I didn't glue or use floral wire in anything, and you can change this out as often as you want. Even if you use floral wire, you could still change the pieces out. Now, instead of completely filling our O up with the greenery, I'm actually just taking it and going around the outside. This is so I can use the same greenery all year long if I want to, and just change out the little pieces that we are putting in the center, whether it's for a change of decor in the home or the season. For this hanging wall decor piece, we're going to need a couple of both. 2 21-inch sticks and 4 of the 12 inches. But first, let's get rid of these wonky fence tops. If you do not have a miter saw, grab a miter box. It is completely fine. I use a miter saw, and I actually grab a couple of these and saw them at the same time since they are so thin. I don't mind bunching them up and just kind of cutting them right at the nub. Be careful if you go to do this, okay? I don't make any recommendations. You do one at a time. Recently in a Q&A, I was asked about cutting things with miter saw and using tools. And I joked because I'm like, you guys really never actually see me cutting anything, because even though it looks like it on film, I am a tad bit scared of power tools too. So here I decided to just give you a nice up and front view of what I actually look like once I have everything measured out and ready to go, and just cut it. Don't try that at home. I don't recommend it at all. For all the pieces, I decided I'm just going to paint these suckers up with some white Snow White chalk paint by Waverly. And I'm gonna turn it kind of into a stain by taking about 1/4 cup water and a nice chunk of this paint right here and just mixing it until I know that the color in the water is blended really nicely. I will of course stain these and paint these whatever colors you want, but I also love how you can see the wood grain shining through these. It's absolutely beautiful when you kind of create like a stain with your paints. Now we're gonna need to bring in the stapler. I know it's been a minute since the stapler's made an appearance. Welcome in people. We are gonna experience the stapler most of this video. And let's not forget, we need some wood glue because we gotta make sure that these are gonna hold, okay? We gotta make sure they're gonna hold. And wood glue is gonna do that for us and give us a nice long hold. I really did not want the staples showing through on the front, so I thought, let's turn these backwards and try to pop these in so this way the staples are on the back. And of course, I fell a little bit short here. Ah! It figures. It figures. It figures. Look at me testing to make sure that that, you know, little staple caught right there. It looks good, right? Yeah, it looks real good. Just as I figured, they aren't connecting. They're not long enough. They didn't go through. So that means I'm going to have to put them on the front. I didn't want to do that. It ended up working out, but keep in mind that the staples, at least the size that I have, they're only big enough to go through the small paint sticks. They're not big enough to go through the larger ones. So I took my time measuring things out. I had these 2 little wooden pencil boxes and this little photo frame here that I wanted to attach onto our wall piece. The idea behind this wall decor piece is to give us a section for us to hang something decorative and to be able to change out floral pieces. So the top, I wanted to be able to change out the frame if I wanted to, as long as it had like a hanger, we could do that. And with the little planter boxes, we could just change out the florals. This way for every season, every holiday, whatever you wanted to do, you did not have to keep this the same. You could actually utilize these large paint sticks. I just used a tiny screw, but feel free to use whatever you want to, you know, create your little hanger there. Here's my pencil boxes that I didn't share with you. I was like, I forgot to share the whole process of adding these little pencil boxes, or they're going to be planners for us today, okay? Put whatever you want. If you can find the box, I really wanted to get some boxes from Dollar Tree, but my recent trip was not fruitful with them. So I had these in my stash and I figured these will work just fine. I'm also taking some wood glue and then I'm gonna flip them on over and staple them through the back. For the hanger, I'm gonna use these little chains from the Fairy Garden section in Dollar Tree. That's what a lot of people call it on my browsing channel. I get such a kick out of it. I love it, little Fairy Garden section. These are going to just kind of go right on the sides. I'm taking a little nail and I'm just going to hammer that in here so we can loop these suckers on the nail and then it'll dangle. And no, of course it's not like, you know, glued down or anything. So these will come off. So be mindful if you create this. You want to make sure that it's either stable or, you know, whatever. But I wasn't too worried about the chain coming off on the sides. I always mean to do little sticker pieces with Dollar Tree's wall creations. I know many of you do not have a Cricut and I get asked about different ideas. I seen this one and just thought it was beautiful and thought we could break this up into several little sections if we needed to and get several DIY projects out of it. So for this little frame that I'm creating, I'm just cutting out the Be Humble piece. And I'm taking a piece of decorative paper from Hobby Lobby and plopping it right onto that and putting it in our frame. I love how this paint stick DIY turned out and I love that it is interchangeable. You do not have to keep everything as it is. You can change it out as you want to. And it only cost me a couple dollars to make. I love little hanging doors, and recently I was at Dollar Tree and seen even in their plus section they have adorable doors for $5. However, it's not a barn door, which I really like the look of barn doors, and I thought I think I can make one for just about $5. And to accomplish that, we're going to need 6 of the large paint sticks and 2 of the smaller paint sticks. We're going to use these to kind of set the tone for the top and the bottom of the door. Of course, they are a little bit wider, so we're gonna need to bring in the miter shears. Oh yeah, everybody is appearing in this video today, people. Check out the miter shears. It's been a minute. And honestly, use whatever you want to trim down the paint sticks. I just felt like we're just cutting a little nub off, and these should be able to do it without causing me too many hand grip issues here. And they did. They popped right off just easy enough. But if I had to, you know, chop the whole head off, it's just easier for me to use the miter saw or a miter box. I grabbed a bunch of these handles from Lowe's probably last year. They were like 99 cents. I like to pop in Lowe's and Home Depot as often as possible because you never know when you're going to find little gems like this for a little bit of nothing. And they had the matching little knobs and everything, and I got all the bits for 99 cents each. So we're going to use this as our little handle, and our paint stick is too thin for us to actually put in the screws. They would like have stuck out in the back. So I'm taking this little Cricut tool, you could use whatever you want, and just kind of marking where the holes are here so I can plop some glue in this space and not have it like oozing out all over the handle. You know what I'm saying? This is just going to mark exactly where I want this to go. When I was happy with all that, I took some wood glue and I plopped it on our little top and bottom pieces here. And I grabbed some hot glue to get that immediate hold. And then we have that long lasting hold with the wood glue. So this way our door will stay together and in place. Because at this current moment, I still didn't have anything on the back to hold the larger paint sticks in place. I'm going to use E6000 for the handles. I was out of my favorite Gorilla Glue gel. This stuff just, I don't like the smell to it. That's the only reason. It works really well, okay, but I'm just not a fan of the smell. I don't have that with the Gorilla Glue gel, so that's why I like to use that a little bit more often. And here's our door, people. Stick a fork in it. It is done. How easy was that? Of course you're not. What if we had a stencil on it? And just mind the fact that it has some paint on it, okay? Some crusty paint. It needs to be clean, okay? Stop judging me. I decided just to stick with a black chalk paint for this, and I used a synthetic brush to just do little swirly motions for our stencil. If you're not very good at stenciling, I do have a how-to stencil video, and I can link that down in the description box for you to just give you a little bit of help with your stencil game. There's a lot of little tips and tricks in there, but the main key to remember whenever you're stenciling and whatever you're choosing to stencil is to make sure you offload your brush so you don't have a lot of paint on it. For our hanger, we're using these awesome sawtooth hammer and hangers. You just take a little hammer, tappity tap 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 on the back, and you are all done. I did, you know, drape some floral pieces on the side here. Love how this turned out. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever created a door with some paint sticks before. For this decorative magnet idea, we're going to be using a couple little pieces of these 21-inch ruler sticks. They're paint sticks, really, in my opinion. They're shaped like paint stick. Listen, call it ruler stick. It's paint stick to me. For our demonstration today, I'm just going to be using 2 little pieces that I cut down, and they're not the same size. I did share the measurements here in case you want to create the same exact size I did. You can actually get a lot of these little decorative magnets out of one ruler stick. You are going to need some magnets. I just picked these up off Amazon. Make sure that they do fit on the back of your wood pieces, so this way you don't have any magnet bits hanging over on your sides. And since I want to decoupage sections of these little sticks, I'm painting it white for a nice background so our design and our little floral piece pops. For the decoupage portion, I'm going to be using my TDS Decoupage Paper. This is tissue paper. It's a little bit thicker than napkin. The name of this print is Large Fancy Stamps and Labels. I'm going to use a little bit of water on a paintbrush to just trim out the little portions of this tissue paper that I want to put on our magnets. And people, feel free to use whatever decoupage paper or napkins that works best for what you're creating in your home, or even reselling these is a really great idea. Little gift ideas. For our medium, I'm going to just use some Mod Podge, and I'm taking that and putting a little bit in each of the corners opposite from each other to put the stamps. And I also trimmed out these little floral pieces, and I'm going to do the same thing and put them in the opposite corners of where I put the stamps. When it was all dry, I grabbed my little finger sander and gave all the excess a little sand. Now, if you notice, there is some disconnect between the paper that we decoupaged and our paint. To adjust that, I like to take a little bit of the same paint we put in the background and tappity tap 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 right on the edge, and then pull it on down with our finger. This gently blends the paper into the paint, and it also doesn't leave a harsh line of the paint over top of the paper. It gives you a really nice smooth blend from one piece to the next, so you can't tell where your decoupage paper ends and your piece begins. Grab you some little tiny pieces of greenery, or cut up little tiny pieces of greenery, some moss, okay, our friend, and some little floral pieces. Just cut out little rectangles or little squares and then glue them in the spot that you didn't put any decoupage. We're going to use some tacky glue and some hot glue to put on top these little floral pieces, so we can then attach all our little bits to these adorable decorative magnets. For these custom knob hangers, we're going to need 3 pieces of these 21-inch ruler sticks. They're paint sticks. Paint sticks. Seriously, don't care what that packaging says. Now, you can make these as big or small as you want, and you'll need to bring on in the drill. And you notice here, I ain't even got the battery. I am perpetrating. You've got the battery in this joint. Make sure you put a drill bit on that sucker that is large enough to drill holes that will fit your bendable gauge wire that we're going to put in here so we can hang from our cabinet knobs. And a little tip, if you're drilling this on your table, it's a good idea to have another piece of wood, or in my case, I'm over here using paint sticks because I'm loaded, underneath of what we're drilling a hole into. This is going to serve 2 purposes. 1, you're not going to put a hole through your table, hopefully. And 2, it's going to stop any split ends on the back. You can, of course, paint your pieces whatever you would like. I'm just using some antique Waverly wax here and letting that dry. Now you can either pick your stencil before or after, or your transfer before or after, completely up to you. I'm going to use this Live, Laugh, and Love. I know it's played out. Listen, it's fitting on here, and I'm inspiring you at home with the idea, okay? You remix this into what works for you. A little tip if you're nervous about your stencil game is to cover up whatever sections of the stencil you don't plan on putting on the piece that you're stenciling. So I just did this as an example for the first one, so this way you could see how super easy it is putting painter's tape over the little word right over top of the love. The bottom section wasn't going to interfere with anything that we were stenciling, so I didn't bother. I'm often asked when I'm stenciling if it matters if I use a paintbrush, if I use a stencil brush, if I use a makeup sponge, a pouncer, a regular sponge. Honestly, people, I personally don't feel it matters much. What does matter is your onload and offload method, and that is how much paint you are keeping on whatever you're using to transfer the stencil onto here. If you have an overloaded amount of paint on your pouncer or your brush, it is going to most likely smoosh underneath the stencil. So it's a good idea to make sure the pouncer, in this case, is pretty dry before you start tappity tap tap tapping that sucker on top the stencil. And if you're interested in more stencil tips, I usually keep my how to stencil video down in the description box. Just click that more button underneath the video when you're done watching this one. You can use whatever type of bendable gauge wire that you would like. I honestly have no idea where I purchased this, how long I've had it. It's been in my stash forever. I am finally down to the bare end of it. You're going to want to cut a piece that is just large enough that you can hang this from the knob. There are a couple different ways that you can obviously bend this to have a little design at the end if you would like, or just completely bend it around the back. It's entirely up to you, but I'm going to show you what I do here and you can take it or leave it with your projects. Once I have it bent in all the right sections, I like to leave just enough on the end so I can create a little pigtail spiral with a pair of needle nose pliers. Obviously, the more you leave through the hole, the more of a spiral you'll get, but on these I just wanted a cute little piece, and it does take a little bit of hand grip strength, so just keep that in mind whenever you're creating these. When you're happy with them, you can seal over them if you'd like and hang them on your cabinet knobs.